Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into something a little different. A story wrapped in memory, mockery, and one unexpectedly bold move that silenced a room full of people who once thought they had you all figured out. Picture this. A glossy reunion invite slips out from a pile of bills. Your name embossed next to a calligraphy you swear is just pretentious cursive. The air outside is thick with late summer heat, and the smell of street tacos from the food truck across the way teases your dinner plans. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere special, drop your location and the time down below. I love seeing how far this little bedtime crew reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The envelope is weightier than you'd expect. Thick cardstock, gold foil trim, and a return address that screams, "We have a budget because we have egos." It's your high school reunion, 15 years since you last stood in a room with those people. You think about ignoring it. You genuinely do. After all, reunions are for folks who peaked early and want to relive it, or for people whose LinkedIn profiles practically strut when opened. You toss the invite onto the counter beside the toaster, not quite into the trash, but not in a place of honor either. That night, your daughter, 10 years old, marshmallow sweet with a core of stainless steel, spots it while buttering her second piece of cinnamon toast. "You going to that?" she asks casually, as if asking if you plan to mow the lawn. You shrug. Doesn't seem like my scene. And that's when she says it. With the clarity of a judge and the warmth of someone who sees every inch of you and still roots for you. If it's not your scene, maybe it needs you there. You blink. Kids aren't supposed to hit you with philosophical haymakers over toast. She folds her arms. Besides, you've got stories they don't even know. That line sticks with you all week. By Friday, you've moved the invite to the fridge. By Sunday, you're Googling what people wear to reunions that don't involve capes or mild panic attacks. Now here's a fun twist. Historians still argue whether medieval sumptuary laws, those weird rules about who could wear what, were more about fashion policing or keeping people in their place. You could only wear purple if you were royalty, or legally sanctioned to flex. It's the ancient version of, who invited him? You think about that while staring into your closet. There's your everyday flannel, your date night if we're going somewhere with breadsticks shirt. And then there's a blazer that looks like it was sewn during the Cold War. You try it on anyway. Your daughter, ever observant, watches silently from the hallway, then pads into the room. You look like a principal. Is that good? Like a cool one who lets kids eat ice cream in the hallway. You both burst out laughing. There's this moment, subtle but real, where you realize she doesn't see your clothes the way the world might. She sees the person wearing them. And maybe that's the only lens that really matters. That night, as you browse through a thrift shop online, because let's not pretend your budget changed overnight, you come across a navy jacket with mismatched buttons and a pocket square that someone definitely glued in. It's perfectly imperfect. You hit order. Quick aside. Did you know Napoleon Bonaparte was obsessed with appearances, so much so that he had tailored uniforms designed to make him look taller in paintings? They say power dressing started with him. Quirky? Absolutely. Effective? Also yes. You try your new look on when it arrives and do a little spin for your daughter. She claps, like you just won an award. Wear that. It looks like you own a bookstore and give good advice. You smirk. Oddly specific. She grins. Maybe one day I'll write that on a card for you. The comment doesn't land right. Away. Not with full weight. But it will. Oh, it definitely will. Fast forward to reunion eve. You're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. 1,000 what-ifs pirouetting through your mind like caffeinated ballerinas. You wonder, will they remember your name? Will they laugh at your jacket? Will anyone talk to you without that sideways smirk that says some of us made it? But what your daughter said stays lodged in your chest like a quiet song. Maybe this scene, needs you. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to show up. By morning, the butterflies have turned into a full air show. You button up your shirt, yes, the bookstore one, slip on your not quite matching shoes, and grab your keys. Looking good, your daughter says, handing you a folded piece of paper. Just in case. In case of what? In case you forget you're cool. You don't open it right away. You tuck it in your coat pocket, next to a peppermint you're not sure is from last Christmas or the one before. The drive is quiet, contemplative. The sun's setting, casting everything in warm hues like you're driving through an old photograph. You think about people who used to call you names, people who assumed your silence meant weakness, your hand-me-downs meant failure. They never asked what else was going on at home. You park in front of a lavish venue, a boutique event space that smells faintly of lilies and insecurity. One last deep breath. This isn't about revenge. This isn't even about proving them wrong. It's about being exactly who you are, walking through that door like your story deserves to be heard, even if it's wrapped in a slightly too short blazer. You grab the door handle. You're in. They say. Moment. You step through the glass double doors. You're hit with a wave of air conditioning that smells like perfume samples and nervous ambition. The lighting's soft but purposeful, like the place is trying to trick you into thinking everything's casual, when in fact, every detail screams status update. To your left is a woman in a pantsuit the color of ambition. You vaguely remember her as student council something or other. She's already deep in conversation with a guy whose hairline has migrated, but whose smirk stayed exactly where you left it. They don't recognize you. Or if they do, they're pretending not to. Classic. You walk over to the coat rack, trying not to make eye contact with anyone until you've properly reassembled your courage. Behind you, a guy in a tan blazer is already name-dropping his Alma. Mater like it's a security badge. Your daughter clutches your hand for a second. Then she lets go. You got this, she whispers. And she's right. But not in the way you think. The name tags are printed in bold letters and slanted italics, because apparently we're all racehorses now. You stick yours on and scan the room. There's the athlete-turned-realtor crowd by the bar. The used-to-be theater kids, now podcast hosts, group in the corner, and a couple of people who look lost in the middle, people like you. You find your table, sit down slowly, like you're not entirely convinced the chair isn't just a setup. Your daughter joins you, swinging her legs casually under the table like this is all a game. And maybe to her it is. Then, of course, they show up. 3 of them. The old crew. The ones who once joked that your pants had character. Because they were so threadbare they basically had a backstory. The ringleader, Jason, approaches with the kind of grin you could slice deli meat with. Well, well, look who finally came to one of these things, he says, voice coated in faux charm. Yeah, I was busy being emotionally well-adjusted, you say deadpan. He laughs, not because it's funny, but because that's what he's trained to do when the social rhythm skips a beat. Still got that sense of humor, huh? Still got that empty space between your ears, huh? You smile and say nothing. The chair next. To you creaks as he pulls it out, uninvited. His crew follows, like opportunistic barnacles. Now, here's a historical curveball. In ancient Rome, clothes weren't just fashion. They were social armor. Senators wore togas with purple stripes, like they were strutting around in bureaucratic highlighter. Your secondhand jacket doesn't come with any dye-based power signal, but the way your daughter keeps glancing at you like you're the most interesting thing in the room? That's armor enough. They launch into their usual verbal jousts. Stories from the glory days, which mostly involve pranks that weren't clever then and haven't aged any better now. You nod politely. You sip your water. But then it starts. First, it's the compliment. That jacket's got flair, Jason says. Very vintage librarian meets time traveler. It's not mean. Not directly. but it's one of those paper-cut remarks that pretends to be a handshake. You shrug. I'll take it. Time travelers usually know something the rest don't. Your daughter stifles a laugh. Her eyes are already scanning the room, noting everything. Who's watching? Who's whispering? She's got that look. The same one you used to have as a kid when you were figuring out who the safe people were. Then comes the second jab. Courtesy. Of one of Jason's buddies. Brent, maybe? You've tried to forget. So, what do you do these days? He asks, stressing do like he's hoping you say unemployed magician just to spice up his evening. You smile. A little bit of everything. Build things. Raise someone smarter than I am. He chuckles, but it's hollow. Yeah, I guess not everyone needs LinkedIn. And here's the quirky tidbit of the night. During the Victorian era, people held calling card rituals where your social standing could literally be decided by the thickness and typography of your visiting card. No card? No credibility. These folks? They're still stuck in that mindset. Only now their calling cards are Instagram bios and job titles with unnecessary hyphens. You excuse yourself to grab some food. Your daughter trails behind you, still scribbling something in her tiny notebook. You ask what it is, and she just shrugs. Ideas. The buffet is long, white table-clothed, and deeply committed to making mashed potatoes look like a high-end art installation. You pile up a little of everything and turn to head back, and that's when the whispering starts. Not loud, not obvious, but sharp. A couple of folks glance at your outfit. One woman whispers behind her palm, not knowing your daughter is watching, her with the calm intensity of a hawk. Don't worry, you say gently. I'm not, she replies. I'm just preparing something. Back at the table, dessert menus are handed out with a flourish. Jason's still holding court, telling a story about his latest client who paid him in cryptocurrency and spa passes. You half listen, mostly, because it's like watching a sitcom that forgot when to cancel itself. You reach into your coat pocket, feel the folded paper your daughter gave you earlier. You unfold it under the table. One sentence, scrawled in her looping, lopsided handwriting. They only laugh when they're afraid of seeing you win. It hits you harder than you expect. A line that would feel cheesy in a meme. But here, it's armor. You fold it back, slip it into your pocket again, and let yourself smile. Not out of spite, but because there's something comforting about knowing your daughter already understands things it took you decades to learn. As the lights dim, slightly for the formal part of the evening, speeches, toasts, and semi-legal roasts, you see her scribbling one last thing on a fresh card from her sketch pad. Want to see it? She whispers. You shake your head. Surprise me. And oh, buddy, you have no idea just how hard that surprise is. Going to land. You feel it before you see it. That distinct lull in the room when a microphone is picked up. The air shifts like the collective attention of 50 adults is trying to herd itself into obedience. Someone taps the mic. Feedback squeals. There's a polite murmur of fake anticipation. The reunion organizer, a woman with a clipboard aura, steps up. Welcome, everyone, she says, her voice the auditory version of a lukewarm latte. We're so thrilled to see familiar faces, and some new ones too. You glance at your daughter. She's not paying attention to the speech. She's folding her card neatly, sliding it into a blank envelope she's plucked from her sketchbook. The look on her face is equal parts math test and mischief. You pretend not to notice, but your stomach tightens. This is the calm before the social hurricane. Jason is half listening, half scrolling through his phone under the table like he's allergic to humility. Brent leans in toward him, whispering something that involves a snicker and the word goodwill. You know it's about you. It's always about you, until it suddenly isn't. The speeches drone on. Achievements, wedding anniversaries, promotions. Someone is applauded for finally making junior partner, and it gets the kind of ovation normally reserved for moon landings. Your fork taps against your plate as your thoughts drift. You remember your own high school reunion 10 years ago. You didn't go. You were fixing the plumbing at your duplex that day, elbow deep in rust and regret. You told yourself it didn't matter. But a small voice always wondered what would have happened if you had shown up. Not to prove anything, but to reclaim a piece of your narrative. History's like that, you realize. The longer you ignore it, the louder it becomes. You think about Eleanor Roosevelt, who famously said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." Historians still argue whether she meant it literally, or as a veiled critique of American class systems during the Great Depression. Either way, the principle clings to your ribs right now, like armor. The table claps. Someone from your graduating class, Melissa maybe, just got named Alumni of the Year. You raise your hands politely, like a referee calling a clean play. She beams from the stage, basking in the glow of carefully curated success. Then, Jason decides to take center stage. He rises with theatrical reluctance, patting his chest like, "Aw shucks, little ol' me," and swaggers up to the mic. The room applauds again, this time more out of muscle memory than actual admiration. "Wow, you guys," he begins, eyes scanning the crowd like a politician who once got suspended for starting a food fight. "It's amazing to see how far we've all come. Some of us are CEOs. Some of us are still trying to figure out how email works." He chuckles. "And hey, some of us decided fashion peaked in 1997. Laughter bubbles through the room. Not loud, not cruel, but enough to poke you like a safety pin in a tight shoe. You sit very still. Your daughter does not. She rises slowly, envelope in hand, and begins walking across the room. Heads turn, whispers ignite. Jason hasn't noticed yet. He's too busy, doing his stand-up routine disguised as a speech. She reaches the waiter. He's a teenager, clearly overwhelmed, clearly just trying to make it through the night without tripping over a salad fork. Your daughter taps him on the elbow, whispers something, and hands him the envelope. He looks confused. She nods with the gravity of someone transferring state secrets. He shrugs and walks toward Jason, who's winding down his roast with a joke about who cried at prom. It was you, but not for the reason they thought. The waiter interrupts him with a tap on the shoulder. Jason pauses, glances at the envelope, raises one eyebrow like he's just been handed a subpoena. The room goes quiet. Nothing makes adults freeze faster than a teenager interrupting a midlife anecdote. He opens it. One card. 4 words. You can't see it. You just see his face drop, like someone pulled the curtain back on his entire high school magic trick and revealed it was just smoke and a mirror cracked down the middle. He swallows. He stares at your daughter. She stares back, expression neutral, as if she just handed over a library receipt. Jason clears his throat. I think I'll sit down now." And just like that, the Emperor's invisible wardrobe has been dry cleaned and returned for store credit. Now, here's your quirky history tidbit. During Napoleon's reign, satire was considered such a threat that cartoonists were actually jailed for making fun of his height. True story. Public shaming, even when subtle, holds a power governments once feared enough to criminalize. And your daughter? She's just dealt out the modern equivalent with 1 card and 0 words spoken. He walks back to the table, every eye in the room trailing behind him like gossip on a leash. He doesn't sit. He mutters something about stepping out for a smoke and vanishes toward the patio like a deflated parade balloon. You lean toward your daughter, whispering, "What did it say?" She shrugs. He'll tell everyone eventually. And sure, enough, the whispers begin. Like social dominoes, people start piecing it together. A woman in a red dress leans over to your table. Your daughter is... Wow. That was... poetic. You nod. She gets it from her mom. The truth? She gets it from you. The part of you that learned to let silence carry weight. The part that knows sometimes the sharpest words are the ones you never say out loud. You feel something shift, not just in the room, but inside you. Like you've been exhaling self-doubt for years and finally remembered how to breathe. As dinner ends and the music kicks in, because nothing says we're still young like forcing your knees into a cha-cha, people begin to approach. Not many, but a few. The quiet kid from chemistry who now runs a plant shop. The drama club girl who left town and came back with stories. Even Melissa, the alumni of the year, who tells you, I always thought you were the most honest one in our class. You don't know how to respond, so you just say thank you. Your daughter tugs at your sleeve. Can we dance now? You hesitate. You're not embarrassed. She frowns. Of what? You're my dad. That's literally the opposite of embarrassing. So you dance. Badly, but joyfully, and in the distance you hear someone say, well, I guess clothes really don't make the man. You smile. Not because it's true, but because tonight, for once, you don't need to prove anything at all. You wake the next morning with the kind of sore legs only middle-aged dancing can gift. Like your knees tried out for a Broadway musical and now they're on strike. There's an ache in your lower back that suggests you probably shouldn't have attempted the Macarena. Again. But there's something else too. A quiet buzz under your skin. Not pain, not exhaustion. More like peace. Maybe even pride. You survived the night. Scratch that. You didn't just survive. You re-entered the arena. You wore your truth-like armor. And your daughter. She swung the sword you forgot you'd pass down. The breakfast room at the hotel smells like weak coffee and industrial scrambled eggs. A few reunion stragglers sit around, sunglasses on indoors like rock stars, or people nursing social hangovers. You nod to a couple. They nod back. Nothing overdone, but different. Respectful. Your daughter's scrolling through photos on her phone, some blurry dance floor shots. One where she caught Brent mid-yawn, and, yep, one of Jason walking off stage with that envelope still in hand. You're about to ask her again what it said, but you stop yourself. Some mysteries deserve their silence. A waiter sets down your toast and hands you a folded note. This was left for you, he says. No name, just a soft gray napkin folded like a secret. You open it. It's Jason's handwriting. For what it's worth, I deserved that. And your kid's got guts. Respect. You let out a slow breath. No apology, but no excuses either, and sometimes that's the rarest kind of growth. You chew on toast in memory for a while, staring out the hotel window at the sun lifting itself over the parking lot. Cars drive off like little chapters closing, each trunk filled with old photos, leftovers, and the strange invisible cargo of reflection. And then your phone buzzes. A message from your cousin. Someone who wasn't even at the reunion but already knows everything. That's the modern grapevine. Faster than light and twice as noisy. Heard your kid delivered a poetic KO last night. Tell her she's a legend. You laugh. Loud enough for the woman at the next table to raise an eyebrow? Your daughter smiles, like she knows. Of course she does. On the drive home, she finally tells you what the card said. 4 words. That suit cost pain. That's it. Not a punchline. Not an insult. Just a loaded truth. And somehow, that hit harder than anything cruel ever could. It echoed, not just in Jason, but in everyone who laughed too easily or dismissed too quickly. You look at her, stunned. You wrote that? I wrote you, she says, shrugging. That's basically the same thing. You chuckle, your voice catching, in your throat. And because every modern car ride deserves a soundtrack, she connects her phone and plays music. Something lo-fi, a little melancholic, beats like heart murmurs. You drive, letting the road fold behind you like worn pages of a diary you never meant to reread. Now, since we're already driving through reflections, let's make a pit stop in history. You know how in ancient Rome, returning generals were given triumphal parades? People lined the streets, tossed flowers, sang songs, and cheered like mad. But behind every general stood a servant, whispering, "Memento mori." Remember, you are mortal. Historians still debate whether that tradition was fact or symbolic fiction. But either way, the idea was simple. You can be applauded and still be humble. You can win without forgetting the war. And you? Last night you won something subtle. You didn't just walk into the lion's den. You let your daughter feed it wisdom and walk out unscathed. A few days pass. Life returns to its regular programming: laundry, emails, gas prices that make you question capitalism. But there's something different now. A thread tugging quietly at your confidence, not unraveling it, but weaving it tighter. You head to work, your usual thrifted button-down, worn shoes, same car with a questionable cup holder. But now, when people glance your way, you don't immediately wonder what they're judging. You wonder what story they're telling themselves. And you know what? That's freeing. At the grocery store, someone from the reunion recognizes you. It's Alex, the guy who used to run track and now coaches Little League. He doesn't mention your outfit. He mentions your daughter. "She's got presence," he says. "Like, the room listened when she moved." You nod. "She taught me that." He laughs. "You sure it wasn't the other way around?" You shrug. "Maybe it's mutual." Back home, you pull out an old box from your closet, one of those dusty, emotionally radioactive ones labeled memories. Inside, photos, programs, a couple crumpled notes from high school, and right at the bottom, an envelope you'd completely forgotten about. It's a letter from your own dad. Dated the year you turned 17. You remember now. He wrote it after your first big failure, the spelling bee meltdown of '03, where you confidently spelled connoisseur with a K and cried in front of half the gym. The letter says, 1. Day, your voice will matter more than your mistakes. That's how we earn peace, word by word. You never believed him back then. But now you wonder if your daughter just lived that truth out loud. You set the letter down, lean back, and let the silence stretch. Not the awkward kind, the good kind. The kind that lets you fill it with who you've become. One more quick history, hit for the road. In 1930s Vienna, a psychologist named Viktor Frankl began teaching that human meaning isn't found in pleasure or power, but in how we handle suffering. The ability to find value in pain, he believed, is what makes us most human. Historians still argue whether his theory holds against modern psychology, but hey, your kid just distilled that into a 4-word card at a hotel banquet. Maybe Frankl would have applauded. Evenings settle back into their routine, the same tea, the same lamp. But now, when you open your closet, you don't reach for your safe clothes. You pick what feels like you, not just what fits, not just what hides. What tells your story, even if it has frayed sleeves and a thrift store price tag? Because here's the truth you finally started to believe. You're not the clothes. You're the courage it took to wear them anyway. A week passes, maybe 2. You stop counting, because real life doesn't keep time with drama. It counts in quiet dinners, full inboxes, and reruns on streaming services you forgot you subscribed to. But something's different now, isn't it? The reunion isn't just a memory. It's become a turning point, a recalibration. You find yourself walking taller, not strutting. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but something close. Your shoulders remember to square up without needing constant reminders, and you catch your reflection in the deli window one afternoon and don't flinch. Instead, you nod, like, "Hey, you made it." The local thrift store, where you've always shopped more out of necessity than choice, feels like less of a last resort and more like a secret garden now. You browse slowly, mindfully. You aren't just hunting for something cheap, you're searching for something true, and that's when you find it. A navy blue corduroy jacket, slightly oversized with elbow patches and a faded lining that smells like time. You slip it on. Perfect fit. Like it's been waiting for you. You wear it out the door, tags and all. The cashier gives you a look that says, "You're owning that." And you are. Now let's slide into a weirdly relevant slice of fashion history. Ever heard of the Peacock Revolution? In the 1960s, British menswear exploded into color and flair. Paisley shirts, velvet suits, floral embroidery on collars. Historians still argue whether it was pure rebellion or post-war trauma dressing itself up in sequins, but either way, it redefined masculinity. Just like your jacket is doing for you now. Back home, your daughter eyes the corduroy like it's a puppy you brought home without asking. She arches an eyebrow. You look like an off-duty college professor who gives existential advice at coffee shops. You smirk. "Thank you," she laughs. That was not a compliment. But she doesn't stop you from wearing it to dinner, or the next community meeting, or the mini birthday party for your niece where you hold a balloon for 3 hours like a sleepy clown. That jacket becomes part of your silhouette. Not a costume, not a shield, just you. There's something beautiful about how ordinary life keeps happening, even when you're growing. Bills still come. You still burn toast. The dog still chews the same slipper every Tuesday. But under it all, a slow internal tectonic shift is happening. You no longer ask yourself, "Do I belong?" Instead, you ask, "What do I want to say?" Because somewhere between the reunion and now, you stopped dressing to disappear. You started dressing to declare. Meanwhile, the whispers about your daughter haven't stopped either. In fact, they've spread. A local teacher reaches out, someone who mentors a teen leadership group. "I heard your daughter stood up for you in front of a whole room. Would she be willing to speak at our next meeting?" You ask her, expecting hesitation. She shrugs. "Sure." Simple as that. The night of the event, you drive her to the rec center, heart thudding like you're the one about to speak. She walks up to the podium in jeans, sneakers, and that same confident, patient poise that turned a hotel ballroom into a courtroom. You sit in the back row, barely breathing, and she begins. She doesn't retell the reunion blow by blow. Instead, she talks about empathy, about inherited shame, about the quiet power of choosing love over fear. She talks about how fashion is just fabric, but meaning is stitched in who you wear it for. She ends with, "My dad taught me that being kind is better than being right. And sometimes, when you're both, that's when you really change things." The room applauds. A few kids wipe their eyes. Someone records the whole thing and posts it online. By morning, it has over 1,000 views. Comments like, "I wish I had someone like her when I was 15. We don't deserve daughters like this." That was church. You stare at the screen, stunned. Not because she's going viral, but because her words are unshakably hers, and yet somehow they sound like echoes of your better self. The next day, she gets invited to speak again. And again. It becomes a quiet ripple, one that spreads through your community like warmth under a closed door. Now let's detour to a historical oddity. In 18th century France, men used to wear elaborate wigs powdered with lavender or cinnamon. Status symbols, statements of wealth and taste. But during the French Revolution, wigs became dangerous. Wearing one marked you as an aristocrat, and many people shaved their heads to avoid suspicion. Historians still argue whether the fall of wig culture was fashion rebellion or fear of the guillotine. But the point remains. Clothes can mark you, but also free you. Back in your kitchen, you're sipping tea when your daughter comes in, holding a box. "You left this in my room," she says, placing it on the table. You frown. I didn't. But when you open it, you realize it's the old shoebox of high school photos you tucked away. The one with that yearbook photo where Jason called you Grandpa Suit. Except now, something's changed. She's added sticky notes to each photo, little captions. This one, killer cheekbones. Look at this guy, fashion icon. I'd trust this man to run a kingdom. You chuckle. Then you tear up. Then you let yourself just sit there, feeling held, understood, seen through the lens of someone who rewrote the narrative in ink only you could read. That night, you write her a letter. Not an email, not a text, a real letter. You slip it under her door, and in it you say, "Thank you for teaching me that our history doesn't have to be hidden to be healed. I didn't know I'd given you my battles, but you fought them like they were yours, and you did it better than I ever did." You hear her reading it, hear the paper crinkle. Then a soft knock. "Come in," you say. She's quiet, but smiling. "You're a really good dad, you know." You laugh. "You're a really good reason." That night, sleep comes easy. No tossing, no shame dreams about high school cafeterias. Just a gentle descent into dreams where you're wearing that corduroy jacket, standing in a room full of mirrors, and liking what you see. A few weeks later, you get an email with the subject line, "Reunion video now available, complete," with 3 exclamation marks, as if the sender believed enthusiasm would make your stomach not knot up like a pretzel soaked in espresso. You hover over it, then you click. Because you're not that person anymore, the one who ducks and dodges the shadows of old echoes. You're the person who wears corduroy in June and lets their daughter rewrite the world with post-it notes. The video opens with that cheesy reunion banner. Class of 2002, stronger, older, better. You roll your eyes because 2 of those are debatable and 1 is downright ironic. The footage is shaky, handheld, recorded by someone clearly more invested in the free bar than in cinematography. But there it is, that moment. You, awkward in your favorite vest, clutching a too small glass of ginger ale, surrounded by people who could smell weakness like wolves sniffing wind. You see Jason smirk before he even speaks. You feel your own face flush, your posture curl just a little. Then, your daughter. The camera jolts when she enters the frame, as if the person filming didn't expect the plot twist. You watch her take that card from her pocket, hand it to the waiter, and then silence. A ripple. A vacuum. You remember that moment from inside your body. But watching it from the outside? That's something else. You're not seeing humiliation anymore. You're watching a pivot point. One of those hinges in time. The kind that scholars might write papers about if you were anyone more famous. Kind of like the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Remember those? Jesse Owens, a Black American track and field athlete, won 4 gold medals in front of Nazi Germany's leadership, obliterating Hitler's vision of Aryan superiority, while wearing handmade spikes from a humble German shoemaker. Historians still argue whether the global press coverage really shifted public opinion or just embarrassed the regime into retreat. But the image of Owens raising a hand, stepping onto that podium, that changed history. Your daughter did something like that. In miniature, in denim, the video gets shared in your alumni group. Comments start appearing. Did anyone else totally miss that moment in real time? I was standing near the punch bowl. I thought it was just a joke at first. Now I feel like a jerk. Major props to whoever raised that kid. Wait, is that your daughter? She's amazing. You reply to just 2 words. Yes, mine. One night, while heating up leftover chili, you get a text from Jason. Jason. Hey. Just saw the video. Didn't realize how it came off. Sorry, man. You stare at it, ladle frozen midair. The man who made your teenage years a daily gauntlet of eye rolls and mockery just apologized. You don't respond right away. You let it sit. Cool. simmer, like chili. Eventually, you type, appreciate it. Took me a while to see it too. That's it. No burn. No mic drop. Just peace. Because when you're finally free of needing revenge, that's when you know you've healed. Meanwhile, your daughter's speech video hits 10,000 views. A podcast reaches out for an interview. She declines. Says she doesn't want to be famous for just being decent. But you catch her watching the view counter sometimes, like someone peeking at a growing plant they secretly hope might bloom. You offer to take her out for dinner to celebrate. She picks a new fusion place across town. Swanky. Low lighting. Mason jars trying too hard. You walk in together. Corduroy jacket freshly pressed. Her in a blouse that looks like it walked off the cover of a Gen Z fashion blog. The host smiles and leads you in. At the next table sits someone from the reunion. You recognize the back of their head before they even turn. Susan. The one who said, "Is this a theme costume?" She glances up, eyes widen, then flicker between you and your daughter like she's trying to triangulate her own memory. You nod politely. She smiles. A real one. "Hi," she says. "You look good." You blink. "Thanks." She gestures toward your jacket. "I like the vibe. Feels intentional." You thank her again. And this time, you mean it. Over appetizers, your daughter tells you a story from her childhood you never heard before. How once, at a school play, you'd shown up in a too small tie and mismatched socks because you'd rushed straight from a shift. She remembers being embarrassed, at the time, but also that none of the other parents clapped louder than you did. Even when she forgot her lines. "I used to think style was about what you wear," she says. "But maybe it's more about what you stand in." You raise your ginger beer. To standing. She taps her glass. And restanding. And re-restanding. You both laugh. Later that night, while washing dishes, your mind drifts. Because what's life without a little dream sequence narration in your own head? And you imagine a different reunion. 10 years from now. You walk in. Same jacket. New scuffs. This time, you're the one people turn toward. Not out of ridicule, but recognition. You sit down at a table and someone asks for advice. Another asks for your daughter's book, because of course she's written one by then, and you realize you've never really been behind. You were just ahead of the curve in a place that didn't know curves existed. A quirky tidbit here. In ancient Japan, samurai carried fans, yes, fans, as part of their formal wear. Not for cooling off, but as a symbol of their rank. Some even had metal ribs and were used for self-defense. Fashion, status, weaponry, all folded into one. Historians still argue whether fan combat was real or just ceremonial flair, but either way, imagine knocking someone out with your accessories. Kind of like what your daughter did, with a card. That night, you go to sleep with the window cracked just enough to let in the night hum. Somewhere, a train whistles. Your daughter's door clicks closed. The world hasn't changed, but you have. And somehow, that makes all the difference. 3 months pass, and your life starts to recalibrate into this new, almost surreal rhythm of not being anyone's punchline. You keep the corduroy jacket, not just in your closet, but in rotation. You wear it to the grocery store, to the movies, to your next parent-teacher conference, where a different teacher compliments it and says, "It's giving classic intellectual dad," which is probably the best compliment you've ever gotten in a school hallway. You also notice your daughter's posture has changed, subtly. She's always been confident, but there's something extra in how she now occupies a room, like she knows she can nudge the world just a bit if she needs to. A soft superpower. But not everything shifts so easily. One night, while scrolling social media past midnight, a cardinal sin you'll never stop committing, you stumble on a meme. It's a still from the reunion video, but cropped cruelly. Just you, mid-blink, with the caption, "When you realize your outfit is a tax write-off from 1979. It's on a humor page you've never followed, and the comments are ruthless in that special way the internet can be. 1,000 tiny jabs, some hit harder than others. Is this guy serious? Corduroy's not dead. It's just crying in this photo. Fashion criminal. Sentence, 20 years of community service with a blindfold. You feel that old sinking sensation, the one you thought you'd buried, like falling through the floor into a time machine set to 2004. You close your laptop. The next morning, your daughter finds you quiet over coffee. Not sullen, not exactly sad, just muted. She doesn't push. Instead, she pulls out her phone and scrolls through her saved posts until she finds something. She flips the screen toward you. It's a painting. Vincent van Gogh's portrait of Dr. Gachet. You blink. Okay? Look at this, she says. When it was first shown in Paris in the 1890s, critics hated it, called it grotesque. One guy said it looked like it was painted by a madman during a fever dream. You squint at the sad-eyed doctor. Still kinda does. Exactly. But guess what? That same painting sold in 1990 for $82.5 million. Historians still argue whether it's even his best work. But no one denies its impact anymore. You sip your coffee. Let that settle. You're saying I'm Vincent van Gogh? She grins. No, I'm saying the internet doesn't get to decide what art looks like. And sometimes weird is just early genius. You shake your head. It's too early for this level of depth. She taps her temple. This level of depth runs 24/7. You both laugh, and the weight in your chest starts to evaporate. Slowly. Later that week, something strange happens. You get an email from a local high school, one you've never been to. Their student council advisor wants to know if your daughter might be willing to speak at their next assembly. They'd seen the reunion clip and thought her message about respect, style, and social courage would resonate. You forward it to her with the subject line. Your growing cult following. She replies, they'll have to bring snacks. She ends up agreeing to the talk, but only if you come with her. Not on stage, she clarifies. Just moral support. Plus, I need someone to hold my granola bar. The auditorium is filled with restless teens. Neon sneakers, hoodies, lip, gloss and energy drinks, and the scent of cafeteria. Tater tots still lingering in the air. You sit in the second row, pretending not to be nervous, though your palms say otherwise. When she steps up to the mic, she doesn't launch into some rehearsed TEDx spiel. She just tells the story, the reunion, the waiter, the card. She even reads it aloud. To those who mock what they don't understand, consider that maybe you're not supposed to understand it. Maybe it's not for you, and maybe that's okay. A kid. Near you murmurs, "Dang." Another nods like they just watched a plot twist in a Marvel movie. Then she says something you hadn't heard before. My dad's always dressed a little differently. I used to roll my eyes about it. But now I think, if you can be that brave with something as small as fabric, you can probably be brave with way bigger things. You blink faster than usual. Just allergies. Totally. The students give her a standing ovation. Teachers are already pulling out their phones. One kid shouts, "Start a podcast." And another says, "Can she run for prom queen?" On the way home, she glances at you and says, "I think you're officially cool now." But like, in a historic artifact way. Like a Roman helmet? Exactly. Speaking of Rome, you know that Roman generals used to parade through the city after big victories with a slave behind them whispering in their ear, "Remember, you are mortal." It was meant to keep their ego in check. Historians still argue whether this actually happened or was invented later by dramatic poets. But it's the kind of theatrical humility your daughter now has in spades. She doesn't let the attention inflate her. Instead, she channels it. She starts a blog, a series of short, funny essays about small acts of courage. She calls it Thread Count, which makes you snort milk out your nose when she first tells you. Because of course she turns your clothing into content. But also, it's kind of brilliant. Your jacket makes the header photo. She even gives you a byline one week. You write about the weird joy of finally realizing you don't have to be everyone's cup of tea, as long as you're someone's weird, delightful mug. That post goes modestly viral. A few dads message you for style tips. One guy in Idaho asks, "Where you bought your vest?" You think he's joking. He isn't. For the first time, your inbox becomes a place of compliments, not calendar invites or warnings about expiring warranties. You and your daughter start a tradition. Once a month, UI. Go thrifting together. Not to shop with an agenda, just to explore. Like time travelers browsing past decades, laughing at polyester disasters, and marveling at velvet blazers that scream 1972 lounge singer. It becomes less about what you wear, and more about how you wear it. With joy. With conviction. With zero apologies. You realize your life is no longer reacting to that one reunion night. It's orbiting something much brighter now, and you're no longer just the guy who got mocked for his clothes. You're the dad who wore them anyway, and raised the girl who turned a moment into a movement. Spring arrives with a theatrical flair, blooms, on every sidewalk, birds working overtime like they're auditioning for a Disney movie, and daylight that stretches just a little longer every evening, as if the sky itself is trying to buy more time to enjoy things. You've never really noticed seasons this much before, but now your attention feels dialed in. Maybe it's all the long walks you and your daughter take after dinner, navigating the neighborhood like it's a museum of quiet, overlooked details. Or maybe it's that your life, once blurred by self-doubt and background shame, now feels sharply outlined, like someone finally adjusted the contrast. There's a moment one weekend, early Saturday, cool air, fresh mug of coffee in your hand, when you spot your neighbor, Kevin, mowing his lawn in what appears to be a full Jurassic Park t-shirt and cargo shorts. Ensemble. He waves, gives a thumbs up and yells, "Saw your daughter's blog! Read the one about your moth-eaten vest. Solid writing!" You blink. Kevin hasn't spoken to you in 2 years beyond Trash Goes Out Tuesdays. The ripple effect of that reunion night is stretching further than you'd imagined, but not everyone is thrilled. At a neighborhood potluck 2 Sundays later, you and your daughter arrive with homemade lemon bars. She insisted on zesting by hand, muttering something about craftsmanship. And you're feeling good, until you see them. 2 of the old reunion crew. Paul and Marcy. The ones who led the fashion mockery in the first place. Paul still wears that smug look like it's part of his brand. Marcy's laugh echoes across the yard, as shrill and sharp as a kettle at full scream. They notice you. They're surprised, then cautious. You realize something fascinating. You're not nervous. They are. You offer a polite nod. Paul gives a too slow smile. "Hey there. Lookin'. The same." You glance at your outfit. Striped linen shirt, slim-fit jeans, and yes, the same corduroy jacket, now with a tiny enamel pin shaped like a typewriter on the lapel. Consistency is underrated, you say. Marcy makes a weak attempt at humor. Still keeping thrift stores in business, huh? Your daughter leans in with a grin so slight it could qualify as legal shade. Better than keeping plastic surgery clinics in business. Boom. Just loud enough for Paul to choke on his lemonade. You don't even smirk. You just head to the food table like it's a runway. It's a small moment. But it's the first time you realize the tables have turned. You're no longer the awkward guest waiting to be invited in. You're the host of your own vibe, and people are slowly learning that you don't play by their dress code or their rules. Did you know that in 1780, a British gentleman named Beau Brummel changed men's fashion forever simply by refusing to wear the powdered wigs and gaudy silks that dominated aristocratic style. He chose crisp linens, tailored trousers, and understated jackets. People laughed, at first. But within 2 decades, Brummel's look became the standard. Historians still argue whether he was a true pioneer or just a dandy with a gambling addiction, but no one denies the ripple he caused. It turns out, refusing the costume can sometimes rewrite the script. A few weeks after the potluck, your daughter gets invited to give another talk, this time at a local community college. The theme: owning your weird. You joke that it sounds like a rejected Harry Potter spell. She tells you to write it down anyway. This time, she includes you on the panel. She wants to show the before and after. You almost decline. Public speaking has never been your jam. But she gives you that look. That, "What are you so afraid of, ancient one?" Look. And you cave. You rehearse in the kitchen late one night. She plays audience, sipping tea and pretending to heckle you. You fumble, freeze, restart. Eventually, you just start telling the story. Not the glamorous version, but the raw, uncertain one. The version where you admit how small you felt at that reunion. How clothes were never just clothes for you. They were armor, expression, camouflage, rebellion. How that moment, as humiliating as it was, cracked something open that needed to breathe. When you finish, she says nothing for a moment. Then, you should lead with that. The event itself is cozy, about 60 students and a few faculty. Folding, chairs, fluorescent lights, the scent of cafeteria fries once again acting as unofficial background scent. You're nervous, but the moment you speak, something clicks. You don't perform. You connect. And when it's over, the Q&A gets weird. In the best way. One guy asks how to get over his fear of mixing plaids. A girl asks if she should dye her hair blue, even if her grandma disapproves. Another kid asks how to dress like yourself when you don't know who you are yet. You answer honestly. You say, "Start with what makes you smile. The rest will show up later." A week after the talk, you get a letter in the mail, handwritten. A freshman from that event thanking you for being the dad I wish I had for 45 minutes. It's folded around a drawing, a sketch of you in your jacket, standing like a comic book hero, complete with a flowing banner that reads, "Thread count." You tape it to your fridge, right next to a magnet that says, "Why not?" The jacket has become more than a statement. It's a symbol. And every now and then, you still get the stares, the jokes, even the social media shade. But now, you welcome them. Because the more attention it draws, the more conversations it starts. About courage, about difference, about how strange little things, like a waiter and a laminated card, can reroute an entire relationship. You and your daughter are closer than ever, not just as family, but as co-conspirators. As co-authors of this beautifully absurd, occasionally viral, unexpectedly empowering little journey. Your blog posts continue. You call the latest one The Corduroy Rebellion. It gets picked up by a parenting website. You laugh when they call you a relatable style dad with heart. But your daughter? She calls you a legend. Half as a joke, half as truth. And maybe that's enough. After all, history has always been built by people who wear what others wouldn't. Things escalate in the gentlest, strangest way, like a quiet breeze that eventually becomes a wind you lean into without noticing. Your daughter's following keeps growing. She starts hosting online weird wardrobe workshops, 30-minute Zooms where people show off questionable vintage finds, compete for who has the oddest socks, and swap thrift tips like medieval blacksmiths trading secrets of the forge. You sit in on one, thinking it'll be mildly embarrassing. Instead, you find yourself genuinely chuckling at a woman in Toronto, holding up a banana-shaped fanny pack and declaring, "This is my emotional support accessory." Another guy shows off a jacket made entirely from old concert tees. You have no idea whether it's brilliant or horrifying. One girl says, "I wear a different hat every day, even to exams. Professors don't ask questions anymore." It hits you. These people aren't trying to impress anyone. They're trying to exist honestly. The way you used to as a kid, before all the filters and checklists and career-driven khakis. And your daughter? She's thriving. She doesn't just share outfits anymore. She shares people's stories, their fears, their firsts, the things they hid, and the things they learned to flaunt. She starts a podcast, titles the first episode, "The Jacket That Launched 1,000 Eye Rolls." You're her first guest. You think it'll be a sweet father-daughter chat. Instead, she grills you with full journalist energy. Were you scared to show up in that jacket? What were you afraid people would say? Why that one? Did you want to disappear or stand out? You answer as best you can. You admit that it was both. You wore it because it felt safe, and paradoxically, because it felt like a quiet dare. And then you say something you haven't said out loud yet. "I thought if I could wear it, even just that once, maybe I could find some piece of myself I'd left behind." There's a long pause, and then she whispers, "You did." It becomes your most shared episode. A clothing brand reaches out to send you free jackets in solidarity. You politely decline, then sheepishly accept one, because it's bright orange and makes you look like a friendly traffic cone. Which, honestly, is the energy you're going for now. It's wild how far the waves travel. Your daughter gets invited to a national teen conference. You tag along like her roadie. She gives a talk titled "Loud Clothes, Quiet Courage," and halfway through, she pauses and says, "I want to show you what changed everything." She gestures toward the side of the stage, and in front of 300 students and teachers you walk out, jacket zipped, enamel pins arranged like medals. They cheer. You wave, awkward but grinning. You don't even notice the spotlight anymore. You're too focused on her. The way her hands move when she speaks, the way her voice lifts on key words, the way her eyes find you like a tether. And somewhere in the audience, a kid leans over and whispers, "Is that her dad? Dude looks cool." You, of all people. Cool. The irony would have made you snort out cereal 2 years ago. Oh, and remember that historical fact you've been waiting for? Here you go. In ancient Rome, purple dye was made from sea snails. Specifically, thousands of tiny mollusks crushed to produce a few drops. It was so expensive that only emperors could afford to wear purple togas. Clothes weren't just decoration. They were declarations of power. Historians still argue whether fashion was a tool of control or expression. Maybe it was both. But either way, those snails got squeezed for symbolism. And in your case, the symbolism came free, with bonus corduroy. One weekend, you and your daughter are sitting on the roof of your apartment building. It's early evening. A golden haze making everything look like a movie you'd actually pay to see. She's sketching again. You're sipping a ginger beer, no phones, no plans. Just sky and space and quiet. She says, "Do you think you would have done all this without that reunion?" You think, probably not. Probably you would have stayed quiet, neatly dressed, mildly unhappy. "I think it had to go wrong first," you say, like burning down a crooked fence before you can build a real one. She smiles. "That's poetic." You shrug. Could have just said no, but okay. And the thing is, she gets it. She gets that this whole saga wasn't about clothes. Not really. It was about permission. About standing somewhere uncomfortable, long enough for it to become home. About the moment someone hands a waiter a card and reminds the whole room who you are, even when you'd forgotten yourself. You lean back on the metal rooftop. Overhead, the clouds look like someone spilled whipped cream across the sky. She says, "I'm glad you didn't change." You say, "I'm glad you did." The breeze ruffles your jacket. It smells faintly like coffee and thyme. You close your eyes, just for a moment, just to let it settle. There's nothing else to fix. You're no longer walking into rooms afraid of what they'll think. You're walking into them wondering what you can notice, who you can see, what you can lift up, and maybe, just maybe, what you can wear that'll make someone else a little braver. Because history isn't just written by the winners, it's stitched together by the weirdos too. You feel the quiet hum of late evening settling in, that soft embrace that seems to wrap the world in a velvet cloak. The city lights flicker on, distant and warm, as if a constellation of grounded stars has decided to keep watch over you both. Your daughter sits beside you, her sketchpad forgotten as she leans her head on your shoulder. For once, the weight of the past seems to dissolve in this simple closeness. The jacket, your constant companion, rests lightly against your ribs, worn and softened by time. You think about how much it's been through, the whispered mockeries, the unexpected cheers, the moments of doubt, and the quiet victories. It is more than fabric now. It's a map of transformation, stitched with stories and resilience. You remember how historians tell us that in medieval Europe, the colors one wore were often dictated by strict sumptuary laws, limiting who could wear what based on class and status. Purple for royalty, black for mourners, and so on. These laws were not just about fashion. They were about control, identity, and power. People often broke these rules quietly, pushing boundaries without fanfare, shifting the culture one thread at a time. Historians still debate whether these small acts of defiance were conscious rebellions or simply everyday choices. In your own way, you have become part of that tradition, challenging norms without shouting, simply by choosing what you wear and how you show up. Your daughter squeezes, your hand gently, pulling you back from the memory. You changed more than your clothes, she whispers. You changed how we see ourselves. You smile softly, eyes heavy but full. Maybe that's the best kind of change. The air cools further, and you both sit in companionable silence, letting the night carry away the last flickers of insecurity and shame. The journey that began with a single card handed to a waiter has unfolded into something neither of you could have scripted. A story of courage, of standing tall in your own skin, and of finding family not just in blood, but in shared truth. As your eyelids grow heavier, you think about the ripple effect of small moments, the ones that seem insignificant at first, but ripple outward, touching lives in unexpected ways. So here you are, nestled in the quiet, wrapped in the warmth of acceptance and the soft glow of new beginnings. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Good night and sweet dreams. Word count, 1139, 300 word. Wind down, the night deepens now, and you feel the gentle weight of calm settle over your mind like a familiar blanket. Your thoughts slow, drifting like clouds stretched across a quiet sky. You breathe in the softness of this moment, the way it cradles you with ease. No need to rush or fight. Every worry, every doubt, now just whispers far away in the distance. You remember how it all began, the unease, the sharp edges of judgment, the sting of feeling unseen, but also the turning points, the unexpected kindness, the quiet strength of a daughter's faith, the small acts of courage that ripple like stones cast in still water. Each moment a stitch in the fabric of who you are becoming. Your jacket, worn and weathered, is no longer just cloth. It is a testament, a symbol of transformation, a reminder that sometimes the smallest choices make the biggest difference. Like the medieval dye makers whose tiny snails created colors that ruled kingdoms, your choices, though humble, carry a kind of quiet power. As you drift toward sleep, let this story settle deep inside you. Let it remind you that your journey, your unique path, is worth honoring. that the courage to stand as yourself, no matter the crowd, is a kind of magic all its own. So rest now, gentle soul. Let the soft hum of the fan and the whisper of the night carry you away. Tomorrow is a new day, and your story, like the threads of your jacket, will keep weaving itself in surprising, beautiful ways. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.